Hi, this is the No Shame Here podcast with me, Emma Jane Taylor. It is a fairly straightforward title of podcast and I hope self-explanatory. Each episode is a chance for me to speak to people about the global difficulties surrounding many taboo subjects, with my focus being child sexual abuse and, of course, the Not My Shame campaign. My guests may have experience on this subject, they may not, but by the end I hope we can all agree that child sexual abuse needs to be better considered if we are to improve the protection of children today, support survivors, and eradicate child sexual abuse for the future generations to come. Some of you might find today's chat with my guest helpful. Some might find it challenging, but I hope everyone listens. And please do contact me if you need support or any signposting. Today's guest is someone who found the courage to speak out publicly in May 2022. Actor Stuart Antony was sexually abused by Billy Nutt when he was just 10 years old. Nutt is serving an 18-year prison sentence for this case and that of two others between 1988 and 2007. Stuart's case was reported to the police between 2014 and 2016. Quick maths tells me that that's nearly 6 years for this decision of 18 years in prison for Nutt. Okay, Stuart, welcome to No Shame Here. Thank you for joining me for this fireside chat. First of all, I want to say thank you. You've been so brave to speak up, and in doing so will have helped so many struggling in silence. And the last few years for you must have seemed like a dark whirlwind at times.
Yeah, it's really strange. I didn't ever think that I would ever tell anybody, ever. I thought I'd take it to my grave and that would be it. It ended. I sort of moved away and carried on with my life, but it was always there, and I noticed it was getting to me. So I decided to go and get some counselling, and actually it was through a friend. She said, "Look, I've been having some counselling. Let me introduce you to her." So I went and spoke to her. Had no expectations of anything really. I just didn't really think I would ever tell her. I just thought I'd go and have a chat. Found it as soon as I started, it just flowed. I couldn't stop. It just would not stop. And that was the same when I went to the police. After I finished my counselling, the sessions had ended, and I felt that I was able to go and talk to the police then. And then I went in, sat down with them, and again, it just flowed and flowed and flowed. And it was like a load of bricks off being taken off me.
Relief.
And it sounds really cliche to say that that weight off your shoulders, but it was just like having a skip being pulled off me.
It's amazing,
it just made me feel so much better. Yeah,
it would have been scary to have gone to a therapist, but then to go to the police as well, because it's really scary, isn't it, when you've been so loyal to someone who's been so bad to you, when you've been groomed, and I say this from experience, unfortunately you've been drawn in emotionally, and now you're going to speak out about this person. It's really conflicting because it's wrong, but it's emotional, isn't it?
Even up until to the day that I went to the police, even after, even up to the day he was sentenced, I still felt disloyal to him, or I still loved him.
Yes.
It's weird to say that. It's so weird to say that.
Yeah, but it's so honest to say that. And so many people I speak to say that. And I remember the first time I sort of had those conversations, and it was really hard for people to understand, because unless you've been groomed, unless you've gone through the abuse as you have from a child through to a young adult, you don't understand the power of what that means by being groomed by someone, and they can't abuse you without having made you like them in some ways, because that just wouldn't work. And so there has to be a bonding, isn't it? So
he knew which buttons to press.
Yes. And also, not for the first time, but we'll come on to that as well, because he was serial. But taking that step to the therapist, then taking it to the police. I know how hard that would have been, and I'm sure there, even as you've come out of that, it's not just click your fingers and this is all over and he's gone to prison. There's a whole heap of stuff, and that heap of stuff is stuff that people don't understand. It's turmoil, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. There was so much, like during the police process, that I had to go through that I didn't even think was relevant at all. Like they wanted my bank statements for the last 10 years because they wanted to see that whether I was making it up, was it financial, was I in debt, and they asked me all this stuff, and I thought, what? Even if I was in debt, what the hell has
Relevance
that
is
got to
that.
do with? Yeah,
And
everything.
that's
They
almost
took my
blaming
phone.
you, isn't it? Right? That's blaming you.
Yeah,
But let's just stop and pause. You were 10 years old,
yeah,
right? As a
yeah,
dancer, ex-dancer, um,
yeah,
who's performed, well, I'd have done anything as a young performer, and so I
yeah. Same. Yeah,
understand how we're setting out, we all want to do our thing, and then suddenly someone's offering us something, and you're like, that's not for money, that's because you're passionate about your acting, your
just a
dancing, your
stepping
singing.
stone into somewhere that I want to
Absolutely.
be. Yeah, yeah,
But you don't realize at 10 years old that actually it could lead to danger because you
yeah.
are 10 years old.
Hadn't a
And I
clue.
think hadn't a clue. And so then just for anyone to judge you or speak to you about, oh, you wanted money. Well, actually, I'm sorry, that's just bullshit. People in the law, the legal
Yeah,
systems need to better understand some of these conversations. Yes, great, he went to prison, but that process must have made you feel awful, Stuart.
it's yeah, absolutely horrible. And even in court, I got such a roasting from his side as well that made me feel even worse. They were trying to convince me that I was gay and I was in a relationship with him. And I thought, do you know what? Even if I was, it still would be illegal because I was a child.
Absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
just, it is ridiculous, isn't it? That they try, I mean, obviously that's their job,
Oh,
but
absolutely,
that
absolutely. Yeah,
that part of the job, I couldn't imagine myself ever wanting to be in that industry because why
yeah,
would you want to put that shame and blame onto a child and
yeah,
try to make
yeah.
it about what they wanted when actually the facts are there? A grown man has groomed, violated, raped a child. Let's just hold that thought for a
Especially when
second.
you're going into a trial like mine, where the defendant has already been convicted before.
Yes.
So that doubt must be in your mind straight away,
Yeah.
instantly. You know his convictions, so okay, it's down to a jury to find him guilty, and the evidence to be there. But yeah,
And you know what?
the barrister must
How,
know.
how much did that trial cost, right? How much did
Oh,
that trial cost? I mean,
yeah,
you wouldn't want to imagine how many thousands of millions that might have cost
yeah,
to get that man into prison. And not
absolutely.
just that, when you take the financial away, the damage it's caused to you,
Oh,
to the other victims,
to everybody, not even
um,
just the victims,
and the
just to
families.
the family. Like my mum had to stand and give evidence and listen to things that even I hadn't told her up to that
Yes.
point. And I was praying that it would never come out. I was sitting there every day thinking, right, if she's not in court giving evidence, she's not going to hear what I'm saying. And then the other two people that were involved, the other two victims, they're not going to hear what I'm saying, even though we all knew what had happened. But I didn't want my mum to hear those graphic details. I didn't want her to ever know.
Of course not. It's
So even
so
now,
upsetting.
I still don't know what she knows. And she says to
Right.
me, "Oh, I don't know what really happened, like things that happened. Will you ever tell me?" I said, "Well, if you know what you know, and I'll just keep back what you don't need to know that now. That's yeah,
No, and actually, it's so hard, isn't it? And,
yeah,
and it's interesting, isn't it? Because I was writing about this recently for my own life. I always felt like instead of speaking out about someone who hurt me, I protected other people because I didn't want
mm,
them to know about that. So
yeah,
you just keep quiet, and then suddenly you go, hold on a minute, they're grown-up adults. They can get help. They can get support. What, I'm in the middle of this thinking like like the Titanic,
yeah,
and I need to go, right, I need to come out, I need to do
yeah,
something about it. And like you, went into therapy. I had no idea I'd be here doing what I'm doing, campaigning,
yeah. No,
charity, or even
amazing.
talking to
Yeah,
You, Stuart, fresh out of EastEnders and the Bill, but here we are having a very open chat about a conversation that has affected both of our lives enormously, and billions and billions of other children around the world. I'm pretty sure the stats are much higher than they say, because of the people who just don't want to talk. So, it's for you, speaking out, I think, is huge, and I'm sure you get lots of people contact you. I have to keep going back to this question: why did he ever get released in 2015? For me, I look at that, and the Glitter case, which we know has recently come up, and today being shut down, he's not going to be released.
I just saw that actually just before I came on.
And the fact that was even a question and went through another billions of pounds worth of entertainment. Why did Nutt get released in 2015? Because given everything that happened to you, the other two, it just seemed so wrong, didn't it?
Yeah, and I always think, and this is where the blame kicks in for me. I do blame myself here, because he was sent to prison in 2011, I think it was. Whenever it was 4 years. Came out in 2015, and that was for abusing a 4-year-old boy, which is absolutely horrendous.
Horrible.
4 years, it doesn't even seem 10% enough of what he should have got, but he was released on license, I think, and whilst on license, he offended again and again and again. But whilst he was in prison serving that sentence for the 4-year-old boy, that's when I came forward, because I needed to know that he was in prison before I could. In fact, I went to visit him in prison when he went in for that 4-year-old boy once. And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my mum. I didn't tell my partner. I didn't tell anybody. I went and I sat there, and I couldn't even eat. I couldn't drink. My mouth was dry, and I physically couldn't drink the drink, sitting there knowing that day I was walking away, and that was the day I was going to go and report what had happened to me to the police. And I sat there and I just listened to his shit, and Harry hadn't done it, and and I thought, you haven't done it, but you know damn well what you've done to me. So we both know you've done it. You wouldn't be in prison if you hadn't done it. It doesn't work like that. So I sat there and I sat there and I sat there, and my heart was I could hear my heartbeat in my ears.
My heart is in my ears now, listening.
So I came away and I did the whole thing of standing there and getting searched. And I thought, God, you're really going to do this. You're really going to go face to face with him now. And I just sat there and had a very, very small such a small conversation with him about nothing. And then actually, once I'd seen him, I couldn't wait to leave. But I waited to the end because I didn't want him to get suspicious about what I was doing, try and maybe talk me out of it. But he hadn't a clue, not a clue at all. Then I went away, and it was actually a couple of days before I even went to the police, I think. It's hard to think back now. I think it was a few days before I even went to the police. I went back and I was shaking, absolutely shaking. But I needed to see for my people. People know now that I went to see him, and they said, why? I think it's because I needed to know where he was, just in case he wasn't in prison. Just in case. There was a story before, and I think I've told this before, and it's of a lady that was in her home, and she absolutely hated birds. And there was a peacock got into her front garden. She was absolutely petrified, but okay, it was behind the glass, so it was by her window, but she kept following it all around the house. It just kept circling the house, but she kept following it. And the reason she kept following it was because she wanted to see where it was. She knew all the while she could see it, she was safe because she was behind the glass. So I think that's pretty much how I felt for him. That's where he was, and I knew that he was going to bed there that night, and I was able to come away and do my thing.
I totally get it, actually. I mean, when you said that you went to see him, I like, oh gosh, my heart stopped. But
Yeah.
I totally get why. And I think, you know,
Mm.
going back to sort of what we were talking about at the beginning, trauma bonding is intense. It's a real thing. And even on the day that you were stepping in there, to have that maybe a little bit of closure, and then to walk away
Yeah.
knowing what you were
Well, there
going
was
to
a reason
do.
behind it, you know, that was,
Yes,
that closure.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, and but also you also knew what he'd done to you and what he had,
Yeah.
you know, the probability was that this had been done to this 4-year-old.
Yeah.
And how many, I mean, the other two, you know, but how many others, right? I mean, how
There,
many
there,
others?
there
They're the
are there
ones
are
you know.
more. There are more. There are people that have
Yeah.
come forward. Even a month ago, I got a message from somebody on my Facebook,
Wow.
and it was somebody that was actually a friend of a friend, and he said, "Look, I read your story. I continue to read your story, and I keep going onto Google and looking at your story again and again and again, and I now feel that I've got the courage to come forward about him." And he asked me to go with him, and I thought,
Wow.
I don't really want to. For his defence side, I don't want that to be tainted in as if I've encouraged him to come forward. He's come
Yeah.
forward off his own back. I've
Yeah.
encouraged him with my words
With your
through
story and
interviews. Yeah, my
with your
story. Yeah,
brave.
yeah. So I don't want to encourage him by sitting down with him and saying, right, this is what you've got to say. He needs to say it in his own words. So
Yes.
I sort of refused in the kindest possible way. I did refuse to go with him. But I hope he hasn't spoken to me since. But I hope he has gone and reported it. I hope he has.
Yeah, and I think it's important. It's not that you don't support him. It's just that,
Oh,
you know,
I support him all day long.
exactly. Yeah. And so, you know, if he's listening now, then and wants some signposting, then we can do that
Yeah,
here. We've got
absolutely. Yeah,
enough people in our network here at the Not My Shame
yeah,
campaign that can support onwards. And you know, hurrah! It's releasing other people to go and find their, you know, closure, and
yeah,
their journey. But you know, of course, you know, we talk about the prison term, 18 years. I personally, I'll be very honest, I don't think 18 years is enough when you look at what has been taken from the child,
yeah,
and the life that, you know, you kind of like, you've had no childhood, you've had no
yeah,
young adulthood, you've been in turmoil through your
yeah,
20s and 30s, and now you're coming out of it, and someone's got 18 years. Well, actually, personally, I think lock away, get the
yeah,
government to build more prisons. There's enough money in the pot, I'm sure, to do that if they really wanted to.
yeah.
And 18 years just isn't enough. But that's my opinion. I don't know about you, Stuart.
When, because I wasn't sure, I'd never really been into court before. I'd been in to see little bits, to research for roles maybe over the years. Didn't really understand the court process, and because there was 3 victims within our case, I came forward first. It was actually chucked out by the CPS. Didn't want to know the first time round.
Oh.
Then another person came forward, and he messaged me and said, I want to go to the police about what happened to me. Would you back me up? And I said, well, that's really weird. I have already been to the police a year ago, and they didn't want. It's not the police didn't want to know. The CPS didn't have enough evidence to pursue it. And even though he'd been convicted for this previous crime against the 4-year-old boy, so the second victim reported it, and the police came back to me and said, look, somebody else has come forward. We want to reopen your case. Would you be willing to go forward with it? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Then whilst that was happening, over this period of 6 years or however long it was, another person came forward. And it's not like we all had the second victim. I hadn't seen for 10 years and had barely spoken to. Maybe a couple of messages here and there might have been like Merry Christmas, or maybe we'll meet one day for a beer, some whatever, I can't remember. But it's not like we'd all sat down together, all 3 of us, and planned it. That's, they took our phones, they checked all the Facebook messages and the Twitter and everything, because it looked like we'd cooked it up, because there was something that made us all come forward within a few years. Whereas,
but then you look at
the
big cases that, you know, like the Nicky Campbell case recently, when they all came forward, right?
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
conspiracy, is
And it
it?
makes you think, why? What happened? What happened to make them all come forward, sort of like lemmings, all in one go, and say, right, now's the time.
Oh, well, I have a thought process on that, and that goes back to the scientific development of us. So, we're, you know, developing children sort of between 4 and 8 years old, 9, 10, 11, 12. We're going into our teens. We're starting to expand our thought process, but our
Yeah.
brain hasn't fully developed. You go into your young teens, early 20s, your brain is starting to develop. Now, what you've learned previously is your childhood education. So for me, it was this story and abandonment and rejection for a big chunk of my years. So I took that into my 20s and was fairly dysfunctional. How I wasn't, in prison or dead by the time I was 20
Yeah.
is a real surprise to many. And then I went in. Then it's sort of like mid-20s, your brain starts to develop. And you go, hold
Yeah.
on, this doesn't feel right. That didn't feel right. That isn't what these people are telling me about their life. So I went
Yeah.
into, like you, went into my own therapy for the next sort of however many billions of years. And then in my 30s, I was sort of settling down, but none of it's felt comfortable. But I think when you've had so much stripped from you as a child, you are delayed with your maturity. And so I really felt like I had a delayed maturity. And in my late 30s, 40s, I was like, I feel like I need to share this to give someone hope. And that was
Yeah.
simply it.
Yeah.
Because late 30s, 40s was when I started. I'm 52 this year, but in my late
No.
40s, I am. But I really felt like, I felt knowledgeable, I felt
Yeah.
safe, I felt much more aware and understanding,
And
and a
and
bit
and the power was back with you.
power was back with me. I turned it around and
Yeah.
I've gone, hold on, this isn't right. And so I started speaking out. And then a lot of my school friends have all come up, gone, actually, we recognise that now. And they've all supported me because they remember me at school. And then sadly, another
Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
our friends who was abused, but she didn't make it. So I do think we get into our late 30s, 40s, I'm not sure how old Nicky Campbell was when he disclosed, when he started sort of speaking publicly, all the people that came out, or you actually would be interested to know. But late 30s, 40s, where I think we all get a bit like, hold on a minute, let's
Yeah.
really turn this in. And because, Stuart, I couldn't have done that in my 20s or my late teens. I was
No.
terrified and I was scared and I was drinking and I was taking drugs
And
and I was
embarrassment as well. Did you feel that?
embarrassment,
And
mortified.
that's the
I
last
was
thing you want to be talking to people about in your teens. Blimey.
totally, and I was also,
Yeah.
I'm in the entertainment business with my school and well-being, and
Yeah.
I thought if I was to talk about this would I thought it would cripple, like completely car crash my career.
Yeah.
So I
Same.
kept it quiet, and because I was embarrassed. And then suddenly I'm like, actually, it's not my embarrassment and it's not my shame. It's not my embarrassment.
Yeah.
And I don't want it near me. And so that's sort of that's my theory on why why like 30s, 40s people
Yeah.
start coming out, because they're developed, their brains have soaked up what they need
Yeah.
to. They've seen the wrong and the right, and everything's sort of turned, that topsy-turvy world from childhood has turned back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it taught me so much as well. Like back to the sentencing, which is where we started, with him getting 18 years. I thought at first, oh, what if he gets 5 years? And I thought, oh, that's good. It's a sentence. It shows he's done it. I even thought, even if he gets a suspended sentence, which would never have happened, I don't think. It just proved. I just wanted a conviction.
Yes.
Even if they said, look, we're going to give you £100 fine, but you were guilty of this. It's the guilt. He was guilty.
Yeah.
That was it. But it all comes down to totality, because there was 3 of us in this case, and they broke it down, and we was all in on the day of the sentencing. So they were actually breaking down each individual crime against each person. And it seems so small, the sentence actually, against certain people for what he actually did. And I thought, that doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem right. But overall, 18 years is good. He's 65 this year. He's got to do a minimum of 12 years. So he's got another 10 years to do at least. So it's going to be 75. So his best days are gone. 75, his best days are gone. He's not going to be. Hopefully, he's not going to come out and reoffend. But I've spoken about this in other interviews. I genuinely hope he gets the help that he needs, because I don't want to see anybody else go through this. I really don't.
No,
not from him, not from anybody, but especially not from him.
Yeah, well, I don't think even at 75 he should be allowed out, because
no, absolutely no. If he could stay in there forever,
yes, but if he has to come out, get the help, and actually. That's where we go. If anyone's listening from the government or taking any bit of notice about what we're saying, this is where we need the money put, because we need to protect children. This guy shouldn't have come out in 2015. Three lives we know have been effectively, their young life was, that one little beautiful life that you got was taken, and you've had to readjust. You're doing really well. Now, but it's been a battle. I know it would have been.
I've sat down with people in government, and you are banging your head against the brick wall with them.
It's so frustrating
because it's their opinions. It's just everything. It's everything. It's all the policies and all the laws that need changing and need looking at and need renewing. More needs to be done.
It really does, and it's heartbreaking when. The CPS threw your case out, even though they knew about the 4-year-old boy who had been sexually abused by Nutt. They knew that, but that for me would have been enough evidence to go, actually, there's a red light here. That
was annoying. That at first there wasn't enough evidence. And I get there's thresholds and there's things that they have to ensure there's enough evidence there to warrant taking it to trial, where it's going to cost a lot of money. So they've got to make sure all the evidence is there, because if they go to court and all that money's spent and the evidence isn't there,
and so these podcasts, No Shame Here, are really just to go, look, these are honest and frank fireside chats where we can just sit down and break things down. It's annoying, it's really irritating to hear that it took so long, but he got a sentence, but there's no justice. But is there really justice? Because there's no winners, right? There's no winners from this.
I didn't come away that day thinking, right, I've won.
Yes.
That's it. I just thought, okay, that's that door closed now.
Yeah.
But that door will be reopened again, because in 10 years' time when he comes out, I'm going to be notified that he's out. So I'm going to have to then relive that again.
And do you think, Stuart, do you think you're waiting for that 10 years, or do you think you're getting on with your life?
See, that's a really good question. I don't know if I am getting on with my life. Because if I was getting on with my life, I think I would be saying, like, I don't want to do these podcasts. I don't want to talk about it. I would just be getting on with my life. But in certain aspects, I'm getting on with my life. But I still want to continue campaigning and being an advocate for this, because it's not talked about. It's especially in men. Like, women talk about it a lot. Women talk about rape, sexual violence in general. After Sarah Everard, people were are talking about it a lot more, which is absolutely fantastic. Domestic violence, any kind of violence. But men, they don't. We lock it away, and we do, and I don't know what. And I think it's more embarrassment, because we're supposed to be the men. We're supposed to be the protectors. And it just makes us feel a bit smaller. But no, I actually like talking about it now, because it's still, every time I talk about it, it's more weight. It's more things off my shoulders, things that I may not have covered before. So it's still helping. It's still doing these podcasts is helping. It is therapy still.
Yes, and I think it's interesting,
and listening to other people as well.
Yes, listening to other people, but also when you sort of like talk about these things, I think you're right. It does sort of it lightens the load, and you know, you're getting on with your life. You're here, there, and everywhere,
Yeah.
and you've got Project Iris, which we'll talk about before we finish. But you've got lots of
Yeah.
things going on, and maybe if you hadn't spoken about this, you'd have been sat quite dark, quite miserable, quite, you know, anxious and concerned and protecting all the wrong
Mm.
people, and maybe you wouldn't have flourished as much as you have become now. And now you're flourishing and really sort of, you know, doing fitting here, there, and everywhere. And so your growth, your development is huge. Now
Mm.
you're speaking out, you're being able to be right. Okay, I'm authentically me. Listen,
Yeah.
there's nothing. I've got nothing to hide. There's no skeletons in my
Yeah.
closet. I'm out there,
Yeah.
and I'm willing to put myself front center of conversations if it's going to help, like you say, men as well. But
Yeah.
Iris, let's just hear about Iris, because this came out of the case really for you, didn't it?
Yeah. So during the case, I was working on a program called Cockney and Scouse with David Easter and Mark Morahan, and I spoke to them a lot about my experiences. David had experienced the same things as well, so we had, and sadly, he never got any justice, but it helped him being able to speak to somebody that had been through it and was going through that court process. So whilst we finished working on Cockney and Scouse, and then the trials happened. But all the while we were filming, I knew that it was going to be going to court, and I wanted to create a program. I wanted to create this set of characters, not just about sexual assault or rape or child abuse or anything like that. I just wanted people to understand the court process.
Yes.
And not in dummy terms, but in dummy terms. I wanted to break it down a little bit. This is what happens after it's left, come away from the police station. So when it hits the CPS, that's when the court process starts, really, I think. It's with the CPS, because they have to look at all the evidence and be sort of impartial to the police, I suppose, because the police want that conviction. Of course they do. They've seen a crime happen. They know damn well that person's guilty. They know that they're guilty. Doesn't always work like that, but I think most times you can suss out whether someone's guilty or not. And if the evidence is there, if it's a recent case, you know, you've got things like DNA and all those sorts of things. And I wanted to include that in this show, so I created this a character called Iris Stone, and she's a barrister, and she's flipped from defense. So she was defending these horrible murderers and rapists, and she flipped and became a prosecutor because she was sick of defending guilty people.
Money.
And and sadly it is. And that is how it works. So I've written this show, and it's in development at the moment, and we in pre-production. So I spent a long time after court, and still up to now, going to real courtrooms and spending time with barristers and judges and solicitors and police officers, and listening to their experiences and watching real trials as well. You know, I've spent times on murder trials, 6 weeks on a murder trial, in the most horrendous murder trial, which I won't talk about, but it was absolutely horrendous. And the guy's now serving 33 years. Again, not enough for what he put that victim through. But it opened my eyes so much to what actually goes on in that courtroom, how it gets to that courtroom, and what happens in that courtroom, and the arguments between the two sides, between the defense and the prosecuting side, and what happens with the witnesses and the statements and the evidence and all that sort of stuff, and the jury and the people that are in the gallery, and we're trying to get all sides. Trying to capture all sides. So
it's a really interesting. Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's really interesting, and you've been through that process, and these are the things that I think are just such a, such brilliant things for the
Mm.
public to see. Because again, I feel sometimes that we go around in circles as survivors. We go around in conversations because we all understand, but we need people to go, actually, that doesn't seem right, or understand the whole
Yeah.
process and understand, because it's all very well, it's all speaking about our traumas, but unless you've lived it, it's very hard to understand trauma
Yeah.
bonding, and all the PTSD. I mean, all the difficulties that come from being abused as a child. So
Mm.
anything that highlights that difficulty, and in this case Iris, sounds like I look forward to seeing that. Do you know when it be out?
I haven't a clue yet, because I want it to be. So we hope to start filming it soon, by the summer. But I want it to be right. I keep going back and I keep looking at it and go, I don't know. And I actually made a huge change in it this week, which I won't tell you about. But it was
No,
huge.
don't tell us anything you don't want us to know.
I may as well got all the papers. I may as well got every single script, about 1,000 pages, throwing them all up in the air. And went,
no.
right, okay, we've got to start again.
Oh my God.
But it didn't. I put it all back together as a puzzle, and we did. It's going to take a lot of editing, script editing, I think, but that's fine. But the character herself is amazing. She's absolutely brilliant, and I got inspiration from it as well, from watching programs like Silk,
Yes.
which Maxine Peake was in, and what a fantastic actress she is, and the stories. So it's going to be 10 parts, but 2 episodes will cover one story. So we'll see the beginning, we'll see the arrest, we'll see the crime briefly, we'll see the interview, we'll see it go to CPS, and then we'll see the trial in a whole episode.
Really interesting.
In the second episode. So you'll see all aspects. It's not going to be like The Bill, where somebody does the crime, and in a half-hour episode we've got them locked up, we've got them arrested, we've got them locked up, we've interviewed them, we've solved the crime, done. Yeah, they're in prison.
It'd be nice if life was like that.
But I would want it, in a way, it would be great that you didn't have to go through all that, but I want it done properly.
Yes.
I'd want, like, even looking back at my case now, if they said, right, we've got enough evidence that day, I'd go, no, look at it more.
Yes.
Doubly make sure you've got that evidence. Triple, make sure you've got it. I don't care how long it takes. Yeah, it was annoying that it took 6 years, but looking back now, thinking about it, I'm glad that they've got everything in place to secure that conviction and that sentence.
And there's no grey areas.
Yeah.
Stuart, look, it's been great to chat with you today to find out more of your story. If anyone is listening now and feels that they need support or signposting, please do get in touch with me via my website, and I will do all I can to help. Stuart, it's been so good just to open these doors and talk about things that so many will be listening thinking, yes, that's me, and I get that, because it will help people. And I think, for me here on the No Shame Here podcast, I'd like to hand back over to you now for you just to say a few words to close this chat today. I would happily sit here for another few hours with you, chatting and chatting and chatting. But you're a busy man, and I think we've got such a lot out today. I have as well, and my brain's already thinking
absolutely, all
sorts of things. And I think actually the Iris thing, can't wait to see that. Thank you. I'm going to leave you all now with Stuart.
So I always think, if you've been sexually assaulted or raped, or whether it's male on female, male on male, female on female, if you've been sexually assaulted in any way, please speak to somebody. It doesn't have to be the police. It doesn't have to be a counsellor. It could be for men. If you're down the pub and you're sitting in a cosy little corner and you're with your mate, tell him. Please just tell him. It will honestly be a weight off your shoulders. It's very, very hard to tell somebody, but I promise you, once you have told somebody, a weight is lifted. I promise you.